Yo, how
Hey
you doing,
man,
Kyle?
how's it going?
It's good. It's good. It's good.
Good man, good to meet you.
Likewise, likewise. You doing God's work out here, man. You out here beating the pavement for R&Bers.
Just trying, man. We love R&B, so we're just trying to help everyone share their story, man. We love to hear the history.
Yes.
We know you've got a lot to share, so we're excited to talk to you tonight.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
And
So,
first, I want to say, let's talk
mhm.
about, the work you've been doing with John from Silk. He's been raving about the work you've done with him. Obviously, you've done a lot with Silk over the years. And, we're going to touch on your work with that in a little bit. But first of all, talk about the work you've been doing with John.
Well, about I say about 3 years ago, John and I had both relocated to California. And while we was there, we said, man, hey, we should start doing this solo project. So he came over one day, and we literally we knocked out one song, and it gave both of us, you know, a vision that this can be done, like this
Right.
should be done. And but the song that we did was it was so different from anything that he's ever done with the group, and just as an artist,
Right.
because it was more upbeat. It was definitely more club driven, um, but it was dope. So fast forward, here we are now in quarantine, and we're both in Georgia. We're both in Atlanta,
Nice.
and I've been pestering him hardcore, because I have this vision of presenting this thing called Panama Gold, which is sort of like a low key movement. Um, that I kind of wanted to like put everything up under, and I
Hmm.
kind of wanted to just like present John through Panama Gold, as a means to let people know, like, yo, this cat is really dope. I really love his voice, and I feel that you guys should hear what he has to offer, not only as Silk, but also as a soloist. So
Right.
that's pretty much what gave us the spark of energy. So we went in the studio, we busted out a few jams, and oh man, it's sounding
Mhm.
spectacular. It's gonna be epic. It's gonna be a good, solid EP filled with songs of love. It's definitely what we need right now. I call it new '90s R&B.
Nice.
So
Nice.
that's the best way for me to describe it, because it's a little hint on what was in the past, what was done in the past, but it definitely embodies a lot of the programming techniques, the technology, like Pro Tools, and
Mhm.
a lot of digital software that's used, synths and drum pads. The programming, everything is done a little differently now than it was then,
Right.
and we've always been, a little ahead of our time, as far as like the way we were recording and the techniques we were using even back then. And so I just wanted to continue that, that movement by keeping the sound moving forward. It may take people a little bit of time to probably understand some of what we're doing,
Hmm.
but if they've been following us all along, they understand that what we try to do is good, solid R&B music with a dash of something that feels futuristic, something that takes
Nice.
us into another place.
That sounds awesome, man. I'm really excited to hear what you guys are cooking up. We're definitely looking forward to supporting that as well. Should be
Yeah.
awesome. I love hearing the progressive R&B, so it should be dope. You know, I want to take things back a bit and touch on your history. I see all the plaques behind you, and we'll touch on some of your biggest hits during this interview. But take us back to your first placement as a producer, and tell us the story of how you got your first placement.
My first paid placement, God, I think, realistically, my first placements weren't even R&B or hip hop. My first placement was house music. You
Wow.
know what I mean? Which
Yeah.
I wasn't even. I was still in junior high school. I had no business
Really?
even going to the
Wow.
studio with my elders at the time
That's
that I was
amazing.
doing it. But I used to, sneak into the studio and make music, and the guys I was playing a lot of my chords and stuff for on their tracks, they were taking the tracks and they were being pumped in big clubs like the Garage in New York City. So, I wasn't getting paid much for it, but it was a hell of an experience.
That's awesome.
But
House music.
fast forward from that, I would say my first solid placement was with Vanilla Ice, and then moving forward, it was just everything else that I started doing with Trackmasters and with Billy Lawrence.
Right. Dope, man. Let's talk about your production process. So what is your process for putting together production, when you're in the studio crafting that stuff?
I like to start in a few places. I really don't have one set way, because I kind of use a lot of different things, but and it depends if I'm doing it by myself or if I'm co-producing it with someone, if I'm writing it with someone or if I'm writing it by myself. But generally, I like to start on my piano. I just like to play on my baby grand piano, which is where I created most of the songs that I did in the 90s. I don't know if you can see it, but it's the baby grand piano that's in the back here.
Nice.
I literally did almost every hit record on that piano, and I placed them in a really organic way, because I would call the A&Rs and the group, the artists, and I would literally just play the chords over the phone.
Wow.
I had the phone on me, on my ear like this, and I'm playing, and I'm kind of giving them the hook, because I mostly wrote all of the hooks for the choruses for most of the songs that we were doing back then. Like My Body, I wrote the chorus for that, and I came up with how, the flow. And then, the other writers that I wrote with, Link and Antoinette, they would come in with me and help me, finalize and fine tune the verses and stuff. But I pretty much had an idea how I wanted things to go, where I wanted it to, how I wanted to sound sonically and everything.
Got you. I want to touch on some of your biggest hits and some of our favorite artists you work with and songs. I mean, you mentioned My Body for LeVert, Sweat and Gill.
Mm-hmm.
Epic song, obviously huge hit. What do you remember about creating that song with the group?
Oh man, first and foremost, just being in the studio with three icons was just it's a lot of respect, just being able to be in the studio with them, and not just be in the studio with them, but they were comfortable to allow this young kid to produce them and to direct their path, because everything we did in that song was brand new for them. Before that, you got to think Keith Sweat, his vibe is more, oh baby, you know what I mean? You got me now. You know what I mean? His cadence is different. Johnny Gill is, put on your red. It's more vocal acrobats, and Gerald is such a soul singer. And baby, so for me to come in, I gave them like some youthful flavor. You know what I mean? I'm like, hey, I want you guys to be on some in the middle of the night when my body's feeling. You know what I mean? And that just that melody in itself, it wasn't easy for Gerald to record it at first. He was like, man, I'm gonna be out of breath on stage. But man, but once he nailed it, which that's just him. He's the best, man. Once he nailed it and the rest of the guys nailed it, it was easy from there. You know what I mean?
Right.
That style became, an easy thing for him to adapt to, and it became what we did also on his solo projects after the LSG's phase had faded out.
I remember you worked with Gerald LeVert as well, like you mentioned. What was it like working with him?
Oh man, he's a pro. He's a pro. He's a genius, and he's a hell of performer, man. He brings everything that you do in the studio to the stage and brings it to life, and he allows your music to live really, really long once he puts it on that stage.
It's amazing. What was it like for you as a young producer, working with Gerald LeVert, working with LeVert, Sweat and Gill, three legends, and then guiding them on how to create a song? Was it an intimidating thing for you to do that, being so young and new in the game, kind of?
Honestly, it just felt natural. And I think you know, it's just sort of been a blessing to be able to work with so many of the R&B guys that I work with, because I feel like I was so blessed to be like one of the architects of male R&B singers, because I was able to work with Silk, 112, Next, LSG, Casey and JoJo, and so many others. But just when I was working with them, with all of these artists, they all of them with all of their legacies and everything that they had done before we stepped in the studio with each other, they've always seemed to just let me do what I do best with no problems. I've never had any major hassles. My main hassles were with new artists. It was never with artists who
Really?
understood. Yeah, to
Wow.
be honest, is the same thing when I was working with Janet Jackson. You know, it was easy. It was no difficulty at all.
Wow. That's pretty interesting to hear. Shout out to John. John, I see he just joined the live.
What's
You
up,
know,
John?
my guy Kyle mentioned your work on "Crazy" for Casey and JoJo. You know, I remember that song growing up. You know,
Uh-huh.
from the Save the Last Dance movie. Love that song. What do you remember about making that one?
Oh man. First and foremost, how that even happened was I had pretty much written most of the song. I was pretty much like 75% completed on the writing portion of the song. And I was just, again, I started on my piano at Los the Maestro. I don't know if you know Los the Maestro, Carlos
Yes.
McKinney. I was at his house and I wrote it on his piano. He had an upright piano and I played it to him, and and he was like, man, that's a hell of a hit record, man.
Yeah.
And I originally wrote it with Tony Braxton in mind.
Mm.
So I went to Clive Davis's office and I played it for him live, and he was like, I don't know, Delite, it says crazy too much in the chorus. And
Mm.
most of the times I take his advice, but I just had a gut feeling that the song was solid, and so I just saved it. And I was at Michael Jackson's recording studio recording Casey and JoJo with a duet with Aretha Franklin.
Mm.
And while we were recording, we took a little break, and I was in a vocal booth where the piano was set up, and I was just in there playing and just singing. And KC came in and said, "We need that song, man. I think JoJo would sound incredible on that." And literally 2 weeks later, I flew back out, and we were recording that song. And the song is a classic. We've sold over 3 million copies of it. It's a beautiful song, and I'm very thankful to be a part of that process.
Wow. So Clive Davis is wrong sometimes, but
We all are. We all are.
yeah.
I mean, hey, listen. Alicia Keys used to come to all of our sessions. You know what I mean? And just
Wow.
used to sit in on all of our sessions. I got tons of footage of Alicia Keys sitting in on our recording sessions, and I didn't know that she was going to blow up the way she did. I knew when I heard that song, "Fallen," I knew
Yeah.
that was the song. If that song couldn't do it, I was like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
She's probably not going to do it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people I just didn't know. You know what I mean? Because she's a different kind of artist. You know what I mean? She's not like a Kelly Price type of singer, but she has her own thing. And I'm used to producing vocalists who are really like crazy vocalists, like can do acrobatic type of things.
Mm-hmm.
But Alicia knew what she wanted. One thing I will always say from being with her in the studio, she always knew what she wanted. She knew how she wanted it, and she proved me wrong and many people wrong. And I'm very proud of what she's accomplished.
Right.
She's written many songs that are some of my favorites.
Amazing stuff. Talk about you mentioned Janet Jackson earlier. The hit you
Uh-huh.
had with her and Busta Rhymes. How did you get that song? How'd that come together?
I was actually in a recording studio in Lower East Side of Manhattan where a lot of the hip hop artists used to produce. Matter of fact, Mobb Deep would be in the same building, and Busta Rhymes would be recording. And I was working with Keith Crouch, you know, Brandy's producer.
Yes. Yes.
And me and Keith were, I was just writing lyrics for music that Keith had. And matter of fact, me, myself, Link, and Keith were just all just vibing, and me and Link were writing lyrics for tracks that he had. And Keith was like, man, I can't believe that you guys would just write lyrics, that you would write lyrics on my beats, Delite. And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? I'm a writer too.
Yeah.
It is part of my financial flow.
Yeah.
So so while we were in the session, Busta stepped in because originally Keith Crouch was doing all of the demos for songs for them to submit to Janet. And they were like on their third or fourth round of songs, the beats that they were sending to Janet. And while we were there, you know, Keith Crouch really set it up for me. He said, maybe you should give it a try, Delite. And, you know, I'm still thankful to this day for him, you know, giving me the blessing to let me try. So I told Busta, I think I have something that'll work. And I went into the studio maybe like a week later, and I did a little rough demo with Antoinette Roberson, and we wrote the hook and together, and I did the track, and we sent it off. And right away, Janet was like, yes, let's go. Let's do it. So we flew out to the House of Blues studio in, I want to say Nashville, Tennessee. And while she was touring, and we went into the studio, and I produced her vocals and recorded her, and the rest is history. Grammy nomination, platinum record, #1. It was a great experience, you know. It was a very great experience.
That's amazing, man. I got to ask about another project you were a part of, and that's Tamar's debut album. And the reason I like to talk about this album is because, you know, I know you had a few songs on there, and a lot of people didn't realize what a talent Tamar was at that time. You know, the album kind of went and didn't get the recognition it deserved, and only later on did she blow up, you know, from reality TV and that type of thing, that people started taking her seriously as a talent. But I always look back at the album. That was a strong album. What do you remember about producing on there?
Tamar probably is in all honesty, she's probably one of the few artists that bumped heads with me in the studio.
Yeah.
But it was a crazy experience. It was definitely a roller coaster, but she's talented. And I think what she hated about me is that I push vocalists. I don't slack on vocalists. I'm very aggressive in how I get things out of them. They hate me in the studio and love me afterwards. And if you remember listening to the album, there's a song called Money Can't Buy Me Love.
Yes.
I pushed her so hard to the point where she hit the Mariah Carey notes in the song, you know. So, you know, that's what I do. Same thing with Silk. You know, I push those guys to the limit where we literally would probably almost want to fight me when we're in the studio. But once we get through, once we play the replay, once we rewind it and play it up and cue it up and press play, and be like, man, this is sick. This is incredible. So, man. You know, I mean that was pretty much my experience with working with her. Amazing.
Speaking of Silk, I'm reading the comments from our boy Planet 12 Law. He said you really knew how to fully utilize Silk's 5-part harmony. I've got to agree with that. And you've done some amazing work with Silk. You know, talk about working with them.
Oh man, I mean, just having the advantage of being able to have like 5 voices and which all like have different tones and textures and unique sounds. Like Timzo really was one of the few singers that had a bass, you know what I mean, in a group, you know, because I think Boyz II Men probably was one, and I can't even think of any other. Even classic groups like 112, they don't have a natural bass singer,
right?
You know, so that in itself was very fun, because what I would do with Timzo's voice is I would use him as a bass line. I would literally take his voice, have him follow my bass line notes that I played in the songs, and then I would sample it and play it. So if you go back and really, really listen to the songs, you'll be like, yeah, I can hear it. It sounds like a bass singer playing along with the bass notes. So I did a lot of unique things with them, with their voices, things that I was just experimenting at the time. You know, I didn't have any one set rule and one way of doing things. I was just having fun and letting the room kind of guide me in the direction of where to go.
That's dope. Love your work with them.
Yeah,
We're not.
they're probably one of my favorites.
Yeah. We're not gonna have time to touch on every song you've worked on, but I just keep looking at those plaques behind you. Is there any songs that stand out to you? Some of your favorites that you've worked on that you're most proud of?
Oh well, of course, Busta and Janet record. And then there's so many people that I worked with that people just don't know. Like I worked with obviously a lot of people really are just starting to know that I work with Casey and JoJo, but they didn't know that I work with 112. Working with even a lot of female groups like In Vogue, working with Tamar Braxton, as you mentioned, working with there's so many artists that I could go on. I work with Darius Rucker from Hootie and the Blowfish. I've worked with the likes of people like Aretha Franklin, and just being in the studio with so many greats. I was just so blessed to be able to be a part of so many different voices and so many different careers. Even Bobby Valentino, another one of my favorite singers. Bobby Valentino, Next. A lot of people don't know that I worked with those guys. And I've had successful records with all of these people. Like we've had all gold and platinum records. So, I'm very thankful.
We got to shout out Link as well. I know you've done some good work with him. We just interviewed him recently.
Yes.
Really talented dude.
Link is dope. Link is dope.
Yeah.
I signed Link to my record label. We were once in a group together.
Oh wow.
And it was me, Link, and two other guys. So I know Link is real tall. So there was two tall guys and two guys like me and the other guy were about the same height. So we didn't look awkward. It looked like it belonged. And we were real dope. The name of our group was Protege. I put the group together. Actually, Link was the last member to join the group, where we kind of like said, hey, come on, why don't you come join our group? Because he really wanted to be a solo artist. And, the group, we had a deal with Eddie F. We really signed with a good friend of ours. His name is Dave DeBerry, who flew us to New York. He got us into New York and gave us the opportunity to really grow our talent and make it what it became. And I'm forever thankful for him, because the keyboard that I actually made all of my hit records with is the same keyboard that he purchased for me.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was saying that Link, that whole process, of us going to New York and coming back, once he finally, the group had dismantled and everybody broke up, I went back to New York and got real heavy into production. And at that time I was working with Trackmasters, where I busted out tracks with them for LL Cool J. I did Street Dreams for Nas with them.
Wow.
I did If I Rule the World for Nas and Lauryn Hill with them. And from there, I was like, I had a good foundation, a lot of relationships at record labels and stuff. So I flew him in, I signed him, and we recorded the demo that we recorded was My Body and a couple of other songs. And that's what I used to shop link to the record labels. I got an imprint deal at Relativity Records, and the rest was history. We just kept writing songs. It was unfortunate that his album didn't blow up the way it should have, because he had a solid album, but needless to say, it was still an underground classic. and I think people still love the album because it's true to R&B.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely an awesome album. We just talked to him the other day. Really good dude. I saw in the comments, Sub-Zero mentioned the work he did with Shades, the song Serenade.
Yes.
Remember that one?
Yes, I do.
Tell us about that one.
That was a song that I wrote with Billy Lawrence, and again, Shades was just another part of that experience. I worked with the person that was giving me that work was G Wiz from Heavy D and the Boys. He was someone who always believed in my career, always believed in my talent, and I love him for that, because him and Billy Lawrence were like the people who were like pushing me into this business, hard. They introduced me to the Sylvia Rones and Track Masters and everybody that kind of, gave me an introduction into working in a professional studio daily.
Yeah. That's dope. That's dope. I got to mention the Bobby Valentino song you did, Over and Over. I actually really like that one. I believe it was on his second album, one of the last tracks. That's a dope song that's overlooked. Really smooth.
Yeah, Bobby's just dope, man. He's beyond dope, and I tell you, people really just don't know how dope that kid is, man. We're in talks right now about getting into the studio and doing the same thing that I'm doing with John John. So
nice.
It could very much possibly be a great situation brewing in the near future with that as well.
That's awesome. And I was just talking to John about your work on Silk's last album, Quiet Storm. That's another project that unfortunately went overlooked, but a really good project. You remember that? You remember working on that one?
Oh man, we did the songs that I did with them. We did them right in my living room.
Oh really?
Yeah, we did it right in my living room in Texas when I was living in Texas. It was awesome, man. We did it just like we would have done any other project, man. We just got around the mic. I put the guys around the mic, man, taught them their vocal parts, man. We recorded it, and boom. Just release it, man. There's a couple of songs on there that I really, really love. I love Quiet Storm.
Yeah.
I love Baby Suit. There's a couple of songs I've done with them, man. They were really, really great. But, we can still release them. We still have control over that.
Yeah.
So it's about us wanting to push it and allow the people to hear it still.
Awesome. So we're just about out of time with the interview. Can you tell us about some of the other stuff you've been working on recently? Any other artists you've been connecting with recently or got worked on with recently?
Well, I'm very focused right now. Honestly, my main focus right now is the Panama Gold movement and everything that comes with it. So John is the first person that I'm swinging out. I'm batting hard out the park with first. John, I got an artist named King Troy, Halo. There's a couple of new people like Sasha Gomez and a couple of other people that I'm working with. And I also will be teaming up with my longtime co-production partner, Kenny Flav, and possibly my boy, Kenny Whitehead, to also do some more work with those projects as well. So it's really, we're doing a lot of stuff with film scoring, stuff for advertisement and stuff like that. So we're trying to kind of like do something that's very different from what people are used to hearing from us. And it's not just R&B. It's going to be R&B, hip hop, EDM, house, everything, from scores for movies. And, it's a lot of different directions, but it's all really hot stuff.
Right. Dope, man.
At the end of the day, it's about John right now. We're trying to win. It's about Panama Gold and John. That's what we're going with right now. Yes, sir.
We're ready for that. That long-awaited John solo project. I mean, just can't wait to hear that EP.
So just so everybody will know, Kyle, the single is called "Do You Believe in Love." We're literally finalizing all of our paperwork right now. And it's as soon as the all of our paperwork is done, I promise you guys, we will start pushing the product out there for you guys to hear it. Because once that's done, everything else is going to flow, and it's just that simple. We're definitely happy and eager to make this happen. We're going to go hard. So stay tuned for what we are trying to do right here. We're really trying to bring back love making music. you know, the first song is more sexual, but we're going to give every aspect of love, you know, from the sex to the breakups to the makeups, everything. We're trying to make it solid, but this will be a good project for people to play with when they're on a date, if they're trying to get intimate.
That sounds amazing, man. I want to thank you so much for joining us for this interview, man. We have so much respect for your, you know, your history and legacy. You definitely got our support. Whatever you got coming with the label, man, just hit us up. Let us know how we can support.
Thank you so much.
We'll definitely do this again sometime.
Thank you so much, Kyle. Again, man, you're doing God's work. You're keeping R&B music alive. You're letting people know that we're still out here and we're not dead. We're still alive, still up. Still. So
appreciate that, man.
We have a lot of great things. I want to say a couple of things, if you don't
Absolutely.
mind. I want to tell everybody to tune in tomorrow to Slow Wine at 9 with me and John, where we spin some of the greatest R&B records from the 90s to the early 2000s. Also, I want you guys to come through on Sunday, which is Mother's Day, for a very special Electric Praise spin, where I just basically spin a whole bunch of praise and worship music. You guys come through, man, and just enjoy that time with me, man. And we're gonna uplift each other's in this time where COVID is really just like messing everybody up.
Yeah, that's dope, man. Love it, you know. And keep it going, man. Love to see, you know, producers and artists doing unique things and keeping themselves out there and getting people excited about stuff in this crazy time. So much respect to you for doing that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And if y'all want to hit us up, man, go to John LR on IG. Go to at Darrell Delite TV on IG and at Darrell Delite on Twitter. Just hit us up, man. Keep up with us, man. We're trying to make this thing happen. I love you guys. Thanks a lot, Kyle. I really appreciate you.
Appreciate it, man. Take care, Delite. We'll talk soon. Peace.
Peace.